Hello guys, this is Orof and a warm welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna break the game entirely. This is the most broken build I've ever played since the launch of the game. It has mobility that will blow you away. It has high damage output, so you can use this archetype both in open world farming, you can use it in dungeons, you can also use it in raids. And yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of speechless and you will soon understand why. So please pay close attention and let's begin by looking at this teaser, just so that you will see a glimpse of the potential here. Let us first look in slow motion how we are dashing all over the screen like an angel of death. I've never seen anything like this and I'm gonna explain to you exactly how we are able to do this. Let us also look at it in full speed just so that you can grasp the full potential and look at this. Yeah, I'm speechless to be honest. We're going to divide this video into two segments. I will first go through an open world version that you can use with this build, and then I'm also going to show you a dungeon version that you can use. So let us begin by looking at the skills. And as primary attack I'm using Sacred Fire, but I will almost never use the primary attack in open world farming. In the first skill slot I use Draw and Quarter, in the second skill slot I use Condemn, in the third skill slot I use Consecration, and in the fourth and final skill slot I'm using Falling Sword. Let's continue by looking at the essences. In the helmet slot I'm using Gleamthorn Crown, and what it says is that Consecration now places you in a state of radiance, during which every 3 attacks causes you to erupt with the light, dealing damage. So now when we are using Consecration, you can see that I have like a circle around me, and whenever I deal damage to a target, this circle will also deal AoE damage to all the enemies nearby. If you look at the chest slot, I'm using Heart of Grandeur, and what it says is that Condemn now conjures a condensed lightning storm that follows you, randomly dealing damage to nearby enemies. So whenever I use Condemn, I will have this AoE circle around me, and this will of course deal damage whenever an enemy is nearby. If we look in the shoulder slot, I use Sivket's Advantage. And what it does is that it prolongs the duration of Draw and Quarter. So this means that I will have 100% uptime on this horse. And the horse I'm using comes from this essence, which is called Paragon. And what it says is that Draw and Quarter now causes you to mount your warhorse and dash forward a short distance, knocking back enemies in your path. You can activate Draw and Quarter again while you remain mounted. So now, whenever I'm on this horse, I can keep dashing over and over again, just like this, as I also showed you in the teaser. If we look in the first main hand slot, I'm using Luminous Rain, and what it says is that Falling Sword now follows you, damaging nearby enemies and reducing their movement speed. So the best thing about this essence is that it's a very huge area of effect. So you can see now I can make damage both to the left and to the right dummy. So it's superb for open world farming. In the first offhand slot I use Gates of Hell, and what it says is that Condemn deals 38% increased damage to enemies below 50%. And in the second main hand slot I use Horn Splitter, and what it says is that Sacred Fire now ignites enemies, burning them for extra damage over 2 seconds. But as I said, this slot is not super important because I'm almost never gonna use my primary attack, at least when I'm not mounted anyways. In the last offhand slot I use Torrential Refrain. This is a key essence, of course, and what it says is that Condemn immediately triggers all continual damage on the target it hits, causing them to take the remaining damage instantly. And I'm going to show you, when explaining this build, why this essence is so important. Let us, of course, also take a look at the sets I'm using. I use 2 pieces of Agmet to prolong all the burn effects that I apply to targets. I use 4 pieces of Vitu just to improve my beneficial effect duration and my attack speed. And finally, I also use 2 pieces of Baron to prolong the duration of harmful effects. Let's take a look at the legendary gems. I'm using Seeping Bile, I'm using Void Spark, I'm using Blood-Soaked Jade, Pain Clasp, Roiling Consequence, Volatility Shard, Igneous Scorn, and Viper's Bite. And if you have watched my previous videos, you know that I really like this type of package because I have a lot of dot effects and I have a lot of explosions. So when I'm farming in open world, it's enough if I hit 1 monster in a pack and all of them will always die. So this is super strong for any type of similar content as well, like Abyssal Verge for example. Now I'm going to talk about the secret of this build. and it's in the details. So pay close attention now, because we're going to take a look at the affixes of my legendary items. So let's go through them one by one. In the helmet slot, I use a rush affix, and these affixes most often drop in Abyssal Verge. So I recommend you to go and farm these, because they are superb. This one says that dash skill cooldown is reduced by 3% when used after not taking damage for 3 seconds. This can stack up to 4 times, and currently I've only been able to stack it 2 times, so the potential is even greater if I'm able to find more of these affixes. In the chest slot here, I'm using another rush affix, and this one is the most important one. It says that dash skills travel 0.09% further and faster for every 1% increase in movement speed. And with this build, we're gonna have maximum movement speed all the time, which is 70%. And this means that if I am able to stack 4 of these essences, I will dash 25.2% faster and further each time I dash with the horse. And this is what enables us to do these crazy things that I just teased in the intro of this video. In the chest slot here, we can see another important affix, and it says that dash skill cooldowns reduced by 0.02 seconds when defeating a monster. And I've only been able to stack this 2 times. It can stack up to 4 times, so I should try to find even more of these. We can also here see another important affix, and it says that dash skill cooldown is reduced by 3% when used after not taking damage for 3 seconds. So if I'm able to stack this 4 times, I would reduce the cooldown of the dash 12% further. And this stacks with the cooldown reduction cap of 30%, so this is an excellent tool to be able to dash even more often. And the cooldown is already low as it is with the horse, but if you add these affixes, that's when it turns this crazy. There is also a 4th affix that says that dash skill cooldown recovery rate increased by 0.1% for every 1% increased attack speed you have. That can also be very useful for this build. If you use this affix, you can also switch in Grim Rhythm if you need to improve your attack speed even further. What's also important to mention is something that I've brought up many times before. In the Paragon, I use the old Warden effects. So it's Defender of Sanctuary, Combat Tricks, Heavy Armor, Rugged, and Combat Expertise. And the main reason for this is that I want to be able to move unhindered through enemies so I don't get stuck. And of course I also want increased size so that I will move even faster, because size increases movement speed. That's also the reason why if we go to the warband room here, we can see that I'm using the Protector warband room. And the reason for this is that here we can find a very powerful remnant called Shepherd's Burden that also increases our size by 15%. And this remnant is something every warband should have. So if you don't have it, go to Purge of the Depths and find it immediately. It's the best remnant in the game. So this is the open world version, so let us take a look at how it performs and look at some gameplay. So here we are doing some open world farming. I have to say that sometimes this build gets bugged and the affixes doesn't work as they should, and then you have to re-equip all of your items, but after that it should work just fine. And to be honest, I wonder if it's sometimes even a little bit too strong, because it seems like we can dash even further than we are supposed to, but anyways, this is how it's working now, and that's why it's so powerful. So let's see now how we are jumping around from pack to pack. And to be honest, in most cases we are almost running around the laps too fast so that the mobs don't have time to spawn. But I've never ever played anything like this. This dash horse has been strong for a very long time. But now with these affixes it's even stronger, so we can use the dash more often and we can dash even further. So I don't think we have to watch this too long. This is a clear indicator that this build is totally broken right now. Let's move on and see what changes we do when we are gonna venture into dungeons. And first let's take a look at the skills. I'm still using the Sacred Fire primary attack. I'm still using Drawn Quarter, and I'm still using Condemn. But in the dungeon version I will also use Judgment and Holy Banner. If we look on the essences, I've switched out the helmet, so now I use Errant Ignition. And what it says is that Holy Banner now mounts a standard of flames to your back that bolsters the primary attacks of all nearby allies to burn enemies. So now when we use Banner, whenever we use a primary attack on a target, we will also apply a burn effect. We have also switched out the chest essence, and now we use Akarat's Rebuke, and what it says is that Condemn now fills your soul with Valorous Retribution for 5 seconds, causing every primary attack to unleash a lightning bolt at your target. So now when we use condemn and I attack a target with a primary attack, you can see that there's a lightning strike from above hitting the target. And this is thanks to Akarat's rebuke. We also use the new shoulder essence called the Yawning Rose. And what it says is that Judgment now calls bolts of fire to fall continuously in an area around you, burning random nearby enemies. And what's good about this shoulder is that it's also applying a burn effect, and this burn effect is very powerful. And whenever we use condemn, we will resolve all dot damage on the target. Since we're no longer using Falling Sword, I've also changed one of the main hands, and now we use the Bristle instead of Luminous Rain. And what it says is that Sacred Fire now also hurls waves of flame, dealing damage to all enemies in their path. So now, whenever I use the primary attack, you can see that I also shoot these waves of fire. We've also switched out Gates of Hell, and instead we're using Unholy Wall. And what it says is that each ally affected by Holy Banner increases the movement speed of you and your allies by 12% up to a maximum of 60%. And this is a great addition because now when we have switched out the shoulder, we will no longer have 100% uptime on the horse. And the banner will help us to constantly move at a high movement speed. And of course, this banner will also buff our allies to help them move further in the dungeon as well. I'm using the same set combination for the dungeon version. And important to note here as well is that I'm trying to look for skill cooldown reduction on my necklace, on my gloves, and also on my rings, to make sure that we have as much uptime on both the horse and the banner as possible. On top of that, I also switched out a lot of the legendary gems, and here I use more of a DPS package. I use Misery Elixir, I use Mother's Lament, Blood-Soaked Jade, Pain Clasp, Roiling Consequence, I use Echoing Shade, Fervent Fang, and Bottled Hope. I use Echoing Shade because the summons also triggers the dot effects from the fire banner, so it's a very good tool to increase my DPS. And I also use Fervent Fang because Fervent Fang will improve the damage done by the Condemn and Torrential Refrain effect. It will not increase the damage on my summons though, but the main damage source here will come from the dot resolving of both the fire banner and from the Judgment. So let us try out the damage. And remember now that I am not fully spec'd for DPS. I'm using a different Paragon and I'm using a different warband room. And I also switched out all of my legendary items so that they have these rush affixes on them. So I'm actually losing out on a lot of DPS, but this build is so strong anyways. So let us now try it out on the dummy here and see how it works. And every time I hit the dummy, I will resolve all the dot damage, and they will be reapplied constantly by myself and my summons. And also this Judgment has a very strong dot effect, because if we go here to the skill page and we read the description, if we compare Holy Banner, we can see that it will give a lot less damage compared to the Judgment. And if you think about it, I've also prolonged these dot effects a lot. I'm both using 2 pieces of Angmet, and this is a very efficient tool to prolong the dots in this build because most dots are fire. We both have the Judgment and the Roiling Consequence and the Holy Banner. I use also this Misery Elixir gem that will prolong the duration of the dots, and that's why I also use the 2 pieces of Baron. This means that every time I apply a dot, when I use Torrential Refrain, the damage output will be a lot higher because there are more ticks of damage that are resolved at once. So this build is truly crazy, and now let's go and take a look at how it performs in dungeons. Let us just look at the damage output here in a golden run in Namari. 52 million HP is gone in a matter of seconds, so the damage output is crazy. And there is nothing to complain about there. Here we are in Destruction's End, and I thought this was nice to showcase because here we can see how well these dashes perform. It's really crazy, and as I said before, maybe they are even a little bit too strong because it feels like we are dashing a lot further than we're supposed to. But this is how it works right now, and it's super fun to play, and yeah, you can see how broken it is when we can dash all over the screen like this. So what I also like about this build is that it's not only super fast and with like S-tier mobility, it also helps us to buff our teammates, because the fire banner is very strong. So not only does it help them to deal more damage, but it also buffs their movement speed. So I would say that this build is very all-round, and if you pay close attention, you will see that we have 100% uptime on either the horse or the banner, so we will constantly have upgraded mobility. And the key in many dungeons is to be able to take yourself from point A to point B as fast as possible to trigger an animation, or to be able to kill off mobs as fast as possible. So that's what I can say about this build. There's nothing like it in the game right now, and there has never been anything like it. This is the most broken thing I've seen so far in Diablo Immortal. So yeah, you really need to get these essences, I mean not essences, but these affixes from Abyssal Verge, because it is not only unlocking potential for the crusader, it's also broken for a lot of other classes. So super fun to play around with, and it will upgrade your game and improve your dungeon clear times a lot. And yeah, there are many builds that are a little bit boring to play, that are very efficient. And that's why this is probably my favorite build so far in dungeons, because it's not only fun, it's also very good. And yeah, I mean, just look at this. I'm speechless, as I said in the beginning. This is a game changer, and if you try this out, I think that you will feel the same thing. And I'm also super happy now with this new shoulder, because previously it felt like we were locked into the Holy Banner builds entirely, because that was the main source of damage. But now we can also experiment a little bit more, since the Judgment shoulder is so strong. But I still like to run both of them, because yeah, it will be crazy ×2. And the Holy Banner, as I've already mentioned, is already a good tool to buff the team and their mobility as well. And here we are as well in Dread Reaver. And the only reason why I wanted to show you this dungeon is because now you will see how important it is to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. Because now when we go to the second floor here, you can see how fast we can trigger the animation of this boss. So it's really crazy. And often when I play the dungeons using this build, I will be able to clear the whole dungeon and kill the bosses before anyone else reaches it. So yeah, the other classes has to also adapt, putting on more efficient builds if they want to be impactful. But yeah, I mean, the Dread Reaver dungeon is not the most fun dungeon overall, so let's not focus too much on it for the rest of the dungeon. But I want to just talk about the state of the game right now. With these new Abyssal affixes, it's unlocked even more possibilities for us to experiment with new types of builds, and this I think is really fun. But I want to bring up again the huge issue right now is that whenever we class change, all of our stash items should also switch class, because now if you're farming one set of Abyssal Verge affixes, maybe different type of sets even, you maybe farm one set for DPS, you farm one set for PvP, and whenever you class change, you will only be able to bring one of these sets with you. And this is a huge hurdle for people to class change and try out new things, and that's a big minus right now in the game design. So I really hope that they fix this. And yeah, I mean, they also introduce new affixes from Vanguard, so it becomes an even bigger issue the longer we progress with new updates and patches. But yeah, here once again, we take ourselves from point A to point B super fast to trigger this boss. And now with this type of damage output, we can also one-face this boss. Here we can often not get him to the gray health bar. It will bug out, but now when we deal this much damage, we're able to do so. So okay, it's not one-face, but it's two-face, so very, very efficient. So I think that we can conclude that this is probably the most powerful builds for dungeons and open world farming that we have ever seen in the game. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you try this build out, please let me know how it works for you in the comments. And until next time, I want to wish you a very nice day or a very nice evening wherever you are. And of course, to all of my clan members in Nyx, I would also like to say Voruk Nyx, Sholak Sol. So, bye bye!